welcome to Asia in Review at Think Tech Hawaii. I'm your host, Hong Jiang, Associate Professor of Geography at UH-Manoa. And my guest today is Professor Elizabeth Wichmann-Walczak from Asia Theater at UH-Manoa. And our topic today is Chinese Jingju in Hawaii. And Jingju, I guess commonly known as a Beijing opera, and we'll talk about why that name, what's the problem with that name. And it's performing arts from China. And Professor Elizabeth Wichmann-Walczak has been instrumental in bringing Jingju to UH-Manoa since 1980s. And in anticipation of the Jingju performance at the Kennedy Theater, Lady Mu and the Young Family Generals, that's going to start later this month in February. We'll discuss today Jingju as an art form, its history at UH-Manoa, and we'll learn from our guest her personal experience of being the first non-Chinese Jingju performer in China. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
So let's start from the name, Jingju, and we'll talk about the problems of translating it into Beijing opera.
Well, okay. As I understand it, it started being called Beijing, or actually Peking, opera in the 19th century in lots of European languages at a time when Europeans were colonialists in China. So it's really a colonial term. And
I guess they didn't know what else to call it, right?
No, I think it was, well, to put a good spin on it, I think their intention was to indicate to other Europeans that this is an important art form. It's valuable. It's as valuable as opera. You should pay attention to it and learn something about it. At the same time, it's we don't use other colonial terms for Asian theater forms now. It's been a very long time since anyone referred to Japanese kabuki as Japanese melodrama. And the other thing about the term is that in Jingju there are actually 4 equally important performance skills: song, speech, dance, acting, everything from acting in the Western sense to pure dance with pantomime and expressive dance in between, and combat and acrobatics. All of these the 4 skills are equally important, and many plays feature the latter 2 with not much of the former 2. So if you call it opera, you're cutting out at least half of what Jingju, the theater form, is actually about.
And the form itself is so demanding. Think about all 4 skills you had to command in order to be a good Jingju performer.
There are different role types, so that some performers specialize in one of these skills more than another, but all performers are trained in all of them initially as children.
Gave us just a little bit of experience, feeling of the Jingju, especially from my kind of rudimentary understanding. As soon as you hear the songs, you hear how words are pronounced, you know it's Jingju. So give us demonstrate a few small examples.
There's even speech in Jingju is stylized.
Yeah.
And the Jingju is from Beijing, that's where the Jing comes from. And the stylization is based on the tones in the language. So for instance, in Mandarin Chinese, the phrase I am not is 我不是. And if you listen to this phrase 我不是, you hear this slight rounding. And it's commonly said everything in Jingju is round, and movement tends to be round, and this is easier to look for and understand. But speech is rounded also. So you take that little bit of rounding, 我不是, and then the role type I'm trained in is the dan, the female. And all female characters are young female characters until they are so old they have to walk with a stick. And then they become older ones. So I'm trained in the young female characters, some of whom are older than I am now. So it's still okay. But they use falsetto voices. When Jingju was created, women were banned from the stage, and all roles were played by men. And the falsetto voice indicates femininity, and it also allows for projection over great distances. Lots of performances were outside in villages. So it's a falsetto voice. 我不是 becomes 我不是 So those same tones, 我不是,
Exaggerated.
are exaggerated.
Yeah.
我不是.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful.
But then when you take that into English, which is what our students do,
Yeah.
if you just imitate the same Chinese phrase, I am not, it's a sing-song, meaningless action.
right.
Because English also uses tones, but the tones of English express the implications of what you're saying instead of the meaning. For instance, the 4 tones of Mandarin Chinese are usually given with the syllable ma, right? When
That's
you're
right,
teaching,
yeah.
Ma, 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 and you're
That's
talking
right,
about
yeah.
your mother or a horse or hamper to curse, yeah?
That's right.
But it works with the word yes, too. Yes, 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 yes.
That's right. Yeah.
And those all have different implications. Yes means something very different from yes.
That's right. Yeah.
But those are tones. That's the, those. So when I
It's
try
a
to explain to
delicate
my
art.
students about tones, I call that yes, the 3 dots of doubt. Yes, and yes, a question mark, and yes, an exclamation point.
That's right, yeah.
Yes, okay. So if you take that, I am not, then you have to interpret it first in English. I am not. And then if you want to stylize that as Jingju, it would become, I am not. And then it has meaning.
That's right,
And you're no longer just doing a sort of Orientalist decoration of your
That's
English
right,
sentence, but you're using the principles of Chinese Jingju vocal stylization in your English sentence. And you can do it differently. Well, I am not. Well, I am not.
Oh, okay.
You can
hear
say
the
very
difference.
different things
That's
by
right, yeah.
using the tones
yeah.
differently in English, and it's still falsetto and it's still exaggerated.
Fascinating.
Well, that's what our students have been working on for months now.
And I'm sure your students are having so much fun learning this.
They're especially having fun because they're getting to work with such superb artists from China. Yeah.
So we'll get to talk about the training at UH a little later.
Okay.
Producer, can you bring up photo number 1 and 2, because the Jingju has these tremendous costumes, often portraying the kind of classical Chinese character. I think that these 2 are actually you can follow up with the next one.
Yeah, these are from the production that we're mounting right now that opens
upcoming
next
show.
week.
Oh,
Yes,
wow.
next week.
Okay, let's move to the next photo, and not this one. Yeah.
Well, this is nostalgia. That's a photograph of me in 1980, after I had studied Jingju for not very long, and then had to perform it publicly and for film crews, which made a documentary of it that was broadcast all over China. It was an interesting experience.
And amazing, you are the first non-Chinese Jingju performer in Chinese.
I'm the
Performing in Chinese.
Okay, the first non-Chinese Jingju performer in the People's Republic of China.
Okay, got it.
Because actually people like Douglas Fairbanks, in the wake of Mei Lanfang's smash tour of the United States in 1930, Mei Lanfang is probably the single most famous Chinese actor, and he was a male performer of female roles in Jingju, and he's also my performance teacher's teacher, so I'm very lucky that way. But he performed all the way across the United States and finished in Honolulu. So
That's an interesting connection.
He took Honolulu by storm in 1930.
1930.
Yeah.
That's
1930.
I suppose that's the first time Jingju came to perform in Hawaii.
There had been touring shichu. Shichu is the generic term for all the different forms of indigenous Chinese theater, all of which have these 4 performance skills.
That's right, yeah.
What has been called Chinese opera, Chinese indigenous theater.
Yeah.
All the theater that was in China before Western style theater was introduced in the 20th century. So there had been many different forms. Each one has developed in a different part of China. So it uses a different language and the music styles and musical instruments of that area. So they all sound very different
That's
and
right, yeah.
look fairly similar. Not identical, but fairly similar. So much of Chinese immigration to Hawaii was from southern China.
That's right, yeah.
So most of the theater forms that came here to perform for the mostly Chinese audiences in Honolulu that wanted to see them were not Jingju.
That's right.
They were
from,
other
from
forms
northern China.
from South China.
That's
But
right,
it's interesting because Mei Lanfang's recordings were wildly popular in Honolulu, in all over Oahu,
Oh, wow.
in the 1920s, before he came.
That's
So even
amazing.
people who didn't speak the language he was singing liked to listen to his singing.
I guess partly probably because there's a strong Chinese cultural presence in Hawaii.
Well, certainly,
Yeah,
certainly,
and-
and
and
it was
the-
mainly Chinese people who were buying it. But that's
That's right,
like
yeah.
there are lots of Europeans, and not many of them speak German. But there's a German singer, an actor who is so superb that everyone in Hawaii is watching his films, even though most of them don't speak
I
German.
see.
It's that equivalent within Chinese culture.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was
Amazing
very
connection
impressive.
over
Yeah.
here.
So Mei Lanfang was quite a performer.
And so you are kind of a student of Mei Lanfang's student.
I am actually an official transmitter of Mei Pai, Mei style performance. If you go
That's
to the
amazing.
Mei Lanfang Museum, they have a series of interviews with me as a transmitter, just as they do with all the other.
Different kind of lineage, I suppose.
I
Oh,
am,
wow. You're a royal.
in the generation, in my generation of transmitters.
Because Mei Lanfang is like anybody who know anything about Chinese theater would know about his name. And it's incredibly, probably the most famous Jingju performer in China.
He became the symbol of China in World War II, also in the 30s and 40s in China. He was
Probably
he
because
was,
of his traveling tour.
Yeah, very much the symbol of China.
Oh, amazing. Let's take a quick break because when we come back, I'd like to have our audience learn more about your story of how you got into Jingju.
Okay.
This is Asia in Review at Think Tech Hawaii, and we've been talking about Chinese Jingju in Hawaii. We'll be right back after this short break. Hi, we're back. We're live, coming to you from Pioneer Plaza at downtown Honolulu. This is Asia in Review at Think Tech Hawaii, and we've been speaking with Professor Elizabeth Wichmann-Walczak of Asia Theater about Chinese Jingju in Hawaii. So now, I'm anxious to learning more of your personal story. How did you get to Jingju?
Okay, well, I came to Asian theater sort of naturally. My parents told me that I was born a theater person, and when I was 8 years old, they took me to Burma. Myanmar now,
Yeah,
was
yeah.
Burma then. And I was able to study performance with the daughter of one of the major theater families, traditional theater families in Burma, and this opened my eyes. There was theater beyond realism and musicals. There was this
That's right.
amazing
Yeah, yeah.
array of theater. So I pursued theater in college, but I also started studying Asian cultures. And I initially fell in love with Chinese poetry and translation, and it led to a study of Chinese language because I wanted to read the original. And so I ended up putting the Chinese and the theater together, and it became Chinese theater. But I actually fell in love with Jingju when it was already the focus of my doctoral dissertation, and I was in China doing the field research. I was lucky enough to be chosen in this group of 30-some Americans, the first Americans to go and do study and research in China after normalization of relations. So we went in 1979.
Quite early.
And I was the token arts person amidst all these other people. And I was observing rehearsals when I realized, I'd been observing for about a week, when I realized that the actors were not singing from a score. It wasn't that they had learned what to sing someplace else. They were actually composing what they were singing as part of the interpretation of their characters. And the director was giving them notes about the choices they were making in Jingju's musical language. And I was just, these are actors who are, I've never met a theater form where actors, and at heart I will always be an actor, where actors have this kind of creative authority. They compose as part of interpreting character. And when I finally performed, and I'll tell you the story of how that happened in a minute, but when I finally performed in my first dress rehearsal with the orchestra, I went out and I started, singing and dancing, and it got slower and slower and slower, and I didn't know what was happening. And finally, the conductor, who plays a single skin drum and a clapper with the left hand, a clapper, he stopped and he looked at me and he said, "Are you following me?" 你是跟着我吗?
Wow.
And
so they're supposed to follow you.
Yes, the actor also conducts the orchestra, sets the tempo. It's just astonishing. They talk about it being a performer-centered theater form, but it's performer-centered in ways that actors would not even think of in the context of actors in this country. So I just became fascinated. Just fascinated watching this. And when I was using standard research methods, and one of them is observation, observation of training, observation of rehearsals, but another is learning yourself. And so that's how I ended up doing that performance. Initially, when my initial doctoral dissertation, the proposal, was on the model works of the Cultural Revolution, because sitting in the United States, as far as we know, that's all that was being done. Of course, by the time I got there, they were banned, and I was told by the Foreign Office at Nanjing University, where I was based, that there's no such thing as model works. That's an unscientific phrase. What do I do? So it took me 2 days standing in line at the public telephone, where it was just the only way to make a long-distance call in those days.
That's right, yeah.
To get in touch with James Brandon, who was my dissertation advisor, and I said, "What do I do?" And he said, "You're there, you know what you're doing, figure out the best thing to do, write it down and send it to me." so I focused on the oral performance, since there had been a lot written about costumes and movement and that sort of thing.
That's right.
And then I couldn't get access to do any of those things that I just described needing to do, because at that time foreigners could only go places where there was a foreign office. And there was no foreign office at a Jingju company. And there was no foreign office at a theater training school. So I couldn't do any of my necessary research. What was going to happen? I had a wonderful advisor at Nanjing University, and she had me memorize children's nursery stories like 东郭先生和狼, Mr. Dongguo and the Wolf. so that I would memorize the tones properly so that they wouldn't change with my emotions, which is what happens to speakers of Romance languages when they're speaking Chinese. As soon as they try to express emotion, they change the tones because that's the natural thing to do. So she understood this, and she had me memorize the poems and recite them to her, lang song, without changing the tones, expressing emotions. So it would sort of ingrain in me how to express emotions with tones.
That's an interesting training.
Stressing the tones. It was very useful.
Oh, wow.
I find that all the words in Chinese that I learned since I met her, my tones tend to be accurate.
Oh, wow.
Those that I learned before that, not necessarily so. It's very interesting. So, and then the president of Nanjing University had a tea. And he had all of his foreign students, I think there were 12 or 13 of us then in all of Nanjing University, come, and each one was supposed to do a little 节目, a little performance. And everyone sang their national anthem or something like that. Well, I sang Kunshu because at the University of Hawaii, I had been lucky enough to study Kunshu, which is classical Chinese theater, with Professor Li Fanggui, who was in the linguistics department. I don't know how many languages he spoke. At that time, he was teaching Thai.
Wow.
But he was a very good Kunshu singer, player of the flute. His wife also sang.
And that's a form in southern China, I believe.
No, well, it comes from Jiangsu province, which is where
Kind of
Nanjing is. So
middle.
central China.
That's right,
If you're from Beijing, you call it the south.
That's right,
If
yeah.
you're from the south, you call it the north.
That's right, yeah.
So the president of the university was very interested. How does this... I was
Non-Chinese
27 at the
speaking.
time, so he called me 外国小妹妹, for foreign little sister. How does this foreign little sister sing this classical theater form? And he asked me how he could help me. Well, I happen to have this research proposal, and I need access to all these places that don't have foreign offices. It turned out that he was a 6th level member of the Communist Party, very high. So he was able to open all these back doors, 给我开后门. And so through his good graces, suddenly I had access to everything I needed.
Oh, wow.
And it was
amazing.
So I was at the theater company or the theater school from 6 a.m. till 11 o'clock at night. I watched early morning training, singing at walls and this sort of thing. All of the training, all of the rehearsals, performances at night, bicycling back and forth because initially I wasn't allowed to eat there because they felt that the conditions were. I don't actually know how to translate this.
Like
条件太差.
primitive.
I guess
suppose.
they were too lacking. Actually, what happened then, I started losing so much weight because it was quite a bicycle ride that one of the families of one of the actors took pity on me and invited me to eat with them, which was a major thing to do because just 2 years ago, having anything to do with foreigners meant you were a traitor.
That's right.
So this was a major thing to do. And it also meant that they were, and I didn't know this at the time, they were using their own ration coupons to feed me. And they didn't have any extra ration coupons because they were feeding me. But my advisor at Nanjing University, as soon as I told her about this, managed to get me ration coupons. So not only was I the first non-Chinese to sing Jingju in the People's Republic of China, I was the first non-Chinese citizen to have ration
To get a
coupons
Chinese ration
in
coupons.
Nanjing. I think some people did in Beijing before that, but in Nanjing.
That's amazing story.
That was interesting.
Is that when you found your teacher?
Well, it was the president of the university who made a deal with me, and in return for opening all of these back doors for me, he got to pick my performance teacher, and he got to pick what I would perform and where I would perform it. And I was imagining another little one of these teas, and I thought that would be fine, no problem. I just need to learn performance to understand the aesthetics. You try them on, you take them in body, and you understand them much better than if you just watch and have somebody explain it to you. Yeah. So he picked this magnificent performer, the personal disciple of Mei Lanfang, because she was his favorite performer.
Wow.
And I ended up performing with professionals. And the audience all came in black cars with little national
that was
flags.
the red flag car at that time.
So it was far beyond anything I imagined.
Wow,
My parents got called by Reuters in the middle of the night. I mean, it became an international media event.
Oh, wow, that's
and
amazing.
I ended up performing it many times, not just that initial time, but again publicly in Nanjing. And then I was put on what in essence is the menu of the Jiangsu Province Jingju Company's performances at the time, where the officials can ask for performance and everyone hops in the bus and goes and gives it. So I was one of the acts, as it were, on the menu. And all of these places, not only with no foreign offices, but where foreigners were strictly forbidden, 对外不开放 places,
That's right,
military bases, didn't matter now because I was a menu item on.
That's right.
And I just found this fascinating.
That is
bussed
amazing.
Right in. It didn't matter because
story.
now I was a Jingju performer, and so all those other things didn't count anymore.
And not just any Jingju performer. You are a student of lineage of mainland Fan.
That's true. And the play that I was taught to perform is the favorite concubine becomes intoxicated, but her name is Yang, favorite concubine Yang. And if you write the character Yang with a different radical, it's the character for foreign, which is also Yang.
Oh, that's right.
So I became the foreign favorite concubine instead of Yang, the favorite concubine.
That makes sense.
So that became my name in the press, the foreign.
Well, that's
favorite
amazing,
concubine.
and that laid the foundation for a lot of what's happening here at UH-Manoa.
5 years
in terms
later,
of the theater.
5 years later, when the Chinese government invited the first Jingju that I directed with my teacher, she picked it at UH-Manoa. And we were invited to Beijing to perform. We were guests of Li Ruihuan. It was really, it was still a big deal because there was still not much cultural exchange. It was still just starting. And the interpreter interpreted to my students that he had just explained that I was the foreign favorite concubine, and my students didn't know any of this background. I had a lot of explaining to do to my students after that.
That's right. That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, Yang Guifei, that the character you played, that again is so well known a character in the Chinese history and culture.
It's a fascinating character.
Definitely.
It was really very interesting to do.
Wow, amazing. So let's take another break, and when we come back, we're going to learn how you bring all of this experience to UH-Manoa.
Okay.
So this is Asia in Review at Think Tech Hawaii. We've been talking about Chinese Jingju in Hawaii. We'll be right back after this short break.
Aloha, I'm Nicole Horry for Think Tech. For nearly half a century, the Hawaii Foreign Trade Zone No. 9 has brought the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. DBET, the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, operates Hawaii's Foreign Trade Zone program to encourage international business and economic development. The Foreign Trade Zone's mission is to increase the amount of international trading activity in Hawaii, thereby providing employment opportunities for the residents of our island state. For more information, see ftz9.org. I'm Nicole Horry. Mahalo.
Hi, we're back. We're live, coming to you from Pioneer Plaza at downtown Honolulu. This is Asia in Review, and we've been speaking with Professor Elizabeth Wichmann-Walczak about Chinese Jingju in Hawaii. So, all that amazing experience you had in China, the royal experience. You brought all those experience back to UH-Manoa. Since 1985, you have been the director of a Jingju performance at UH-Manoa at the
director
theater.
of the Asian theater program since '85. I've been teaching Chinese theater since '81. Yeah, and the first training program in production was '84, '85. So. I ended up not being allowed to have my performance teacher and her colleagues come teach, my performance teacher, Shen Xiaomei, because she was from Jiangsu province. And the Chinese Ministry of Culture felt that since this was the first time such an exchange was happening, it should be someone from the national level and not the province level.
Okay.
So the teachers who came the first time were from the China Jingju Company rather than the Jiangsu one.
And they're probably based in Beijing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So Yang Qiuling, who was also a student of Mei Lanfang, she was his student at the National Academy for Xiqu, Indigenous Chinese Theater Training. She not his personal student, the way my teacher had been. My teacher was not a student at an academy. It's a different way of learning.
Actually,
I
that's a
suppose
more traditional way of learning.
Yeah, it's the more
disciple
traditional
to
way.
student direct training.
Exactly.
That's right.
That's the more traditional way. But in the People's Republic of China, the academy is the standard learning method. So the personal one is the exception.
Yeah.
In this in the then new system. So the play though was the play selected by my teacher. So I was faced with having to figure out how to organize a training program. What would be the best way in less than a year?
And you're talking about performing in English.
The Asian Theater program at the University of Hawaii, all of our productions are in English. Our audience, not only is our audience English speaking, but our actors are English speaking.
Yeah.
And as I'm sure everyone knows from watching films, the finest film stars have to be very good in a second language to perform effectively in that second language.
Oh, definitely.
And we've all watched great film stars do not very well in a second language in film. We've all seen that. What happened to him or what happened to her? And it's the difficulty because your language connects at a subconscious level very deeply, and it's hard to make that happen in a second language that doesn't connect that way.
Okay, so it's training students to perform Jingju in English, and they also have to learn the tones and the music, and also the movements and
absolutely
everything.
So what we worked out, and this is sort of three-way, as much contact with my teacher in Nanjing as possible, and Yang Qiuling and myself here, we worked out a system where we had 2 regular credit classes in theater and dance, and 2 in music. We had 3 teachers. 1 teacher teaching female roles, 1 teacher teaching male roles, and 1 teacher teaching all the instruments in the orchestra.
Oh, okay.
So it has
because there's
it has to be an
another
incredible
set of-
musician.
That's right.
But in our productions, all of the orchestra is also students. So the orchestra classes. Work in essence the same way that the acting ones do, which is to say very early on, at the end of the second week or so, you need to know what student is playing what role, because you need to train them specifically in that role.
That's right.
And the same obviously with the musical instruments.
Oh, wow.
So in theater we have a voice class that everyone takes, and a physical performance class that everyone takes.
Almost like the martial arts part, right?
Well, it's also movement. You don't point like this. You learn to point like this.
Oh yeah,
and it's not just that your hand circles and your eyes circle with it, but every part of your body, even your torso. There's all this that happens. It doesn't happen overnight.
That's right. Yeah.
So, and how you walk, absolutely everything is stylized,
Oh, wow.
and it's stylized somewhat differently for every role category. And obviously in music, if you're playing, we had 2 classes, one in the percussion instruments and one in the melodic instruments. But clearly you have to know which instrument you're playing, and then there needs to be individual instruction. So as soon as everything was specifically cast, and we do this today, now, then there are all these individual classes throughout the day in all of the specific roles and musical instruments. And that goes on all the way through the fall semester. So the teachers from China, and they created this, are like missionaries of Jingju, because they are teaching from 8 or 9 in the morning until 5 or 6, and then halfway through the semester, we start adding evening classes so that different students in the same scene come together and can work on that scene. So then they're working from 8 or 9 in the morning till 10:30, 11 at night.
Wow.
And
so
then,
it's a class plus preparation and rehearsal for
well,
the show.
all of this is class. We don't start rehearsal till January of the next semester.
Oh, okay.
And rehearsal then has a very different purpose because all of these classes are imitating the teacher. This is the traditional way that performance is taught in Jingju and many other traditional performing arts in China. There isn't a lot of explanation.
You do it.
There's no why for this is done
That's
this
right,
way.
yeah.
It's because it's done that way.
That's right.
So you imitate your teacher, and your teacher makes subtle corrections to how you're doing it.
Wow.
Over and over. So that it's then very necessary to have a rehearsal period in which you make all of this your own, so that by the time you meet an audience, you are being expressive with it and not just carefully imitating.
That's right.
It's a
That's
completely
actually
different
so
process.
important.
Yeah.
That's right.
So these are not rehearsals during the entire fall semester, even though they're happening at night. But they are starting in January. They are rehearsals. And the translation then has to be done such that, for instance, for singing, Jingju is structured in couplets. And the two lines of a couplet, there are exceptions, but generally they are 10 written characters long, that means 10 syllables long, or 7 written characters long, 7 syllables long. And each line then divides into 3 sections, which are, in terms of syntax, they're discrete. In terms of they're 3 discrete little sets of ideas that are connected together. So when you do a translation, your translation has to be like that.
That's very, very demanding. You have to translate both the sections and also the meaning.
Right, because in between those sections there may be an instrumental interlude. So you can't possibly be in the middle of a multisyllabic word and pause for instrumental music, for instance. Yeah. Then the other thing is that I've mentioned there are different role types for young females and young males and older males and the painted face males.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, they all have different demands for sound. The young female with that falsetto that I was using, if there's a lot of notes, a lot of melisma to sing one syllable, then it needs to be an E sound or an oo sound.
Okay.
Whereas for the male character, it needs to be an ah sound.
That's
and for a painted face character, it needs to be an ang or an ong or an an sound.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah, so that the meaning is the easy part of the translation. The form, and then it needs to rhyme.
That's right. It's a poetry.
Yeah. So the form is absolutely crucial. Otherwise, you can't possibly sing it as though it were Jingju. If you don't have the right kinds of vowels, you can't do the things with the vowels that you have to do in Jingju.
So much work goes into the performance that's coming up in February.
It's so much fun.
Yeah,
it's also just a great deal of fun, and you just do the best you can to make that form happen.
It's unfortunate we were not able to transform the images that you send.
That's
but I know they're so beautiful and colorful. But
we just have to come and see the production.
Exactly. So come to the Kennedy Theater starting from February 20th.
I do have a poster. I could hold up a poster.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh, that's a beautiful one. Yeah, that works. Yeah.
There we go. There we go. So the Lady Mu, this is Lady Mu of Lady Mu and the Yang family generals. And then this is a sheet of pictures of a few other characters. And actually, this is useful for illustrating what I was talking about. If I can peer around this, because she, of course, is a young female character, even though she is in her 50s.
Oh, okay.
And this is one of the painted face bravura male characters I was talking about. This is an older male character, and here he is again with her. And then here are 2 very young characters, female in red and male dressed in white. And this production is, it has all 4 of the performance skills. So these students have been training in combat, in some simple acrobatics, as well as in singing and speech and all of these different ways of moving and moving expressively in Jingju style.
That's great, and you have to come and see it to experience it. So we're going to take the last quick break. This is Asia in Review at Think Tech Hawaii. I'm your host, Hong Jiang, and we've been speaking about Chinese Jingju in Hawaii. We'll be right back. I'm Hong Jiang, host for Asia in Review on Tuesdays.
And I'm David Day, host for Asian Review on Thursdays. Both of us broadcast our respective shows at 4 p.m.
And my topics tend to deal with questions related to environment, culture, history, and sometimes human rights.
And my shows tend to be on international business, foreign policy, geopolitics, and national security. And you can watch our shows live on the Think Tech website at thinktechhawaii.com.
And you can also watch us on YouTube or Olalo.
So come join us on Thursdays at 4 p.m. I'm David Day.
And on Tuesdays at 4 p.m., I'm Hong Jiang.
Aloha.
Aloha. Hi, we're back. We're live, coming to you from downtown Honolulu. This is Asia in Review at Think Tech Hawaii, and we'll be speaking with Professor Elizabeth Wichmann-Walczak of Asia Theater at UH-Manoa about Chinese Jingju in Hawaii. And again, so amazing to learn all these different facets of Jingju and your experience with it. And all of that, those are going to come into this upcoming show, Lady Mu and the Young Family Generals. But before we get to this upcoming show, since 1985, you've directed various number of shows, right?
Yeah, this will be the 8th one.
The 8th one.
An auspicious number.
That is, that's right. And I personally have seen the last two. One is the Young Family General, female generals, women generals of the young family, and the White Snake. And do you show the Chinese theater every 4 years?
Well, the Asian theater program, for quite a while now, has had a rotation of 4 years. So the Chinese theater comes around every 4th year. Indonesian Randai or some other Indonesian theater form every 4 years, a Japanese theater form every 4 years, and then every 4 years we also have a guest, so that we bring in something that we 3 faculty members do not specialize in.
I see.
So that we have even more variety in the program for the students, because this is first and foremost about training, about experiencing this many different theater forms at this very intense long-term level.
And the performers.
And then about presenting them publicly.
That's right. The performers are students. Are they undergrad or grad students or PhD or all different levels?
The whole range. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Costumes. They are beautiful, colorful, and also fitting with each different roles. Who made the costumes?
Well, not only for Jingju, but for all of these theater forms, we work with artists and companies in Asia.
Okay.
So the costumes are made for our students, in this case, in China.
Oh, okay.
And since 1993, Lu Ganzhang, who was my performance teacher, Shan Xiaomei's, she was the head of, he headed her troupe. Ran her troupe for her at that time within the Jiangsu Province Jingju Company. And he has been coming as the teacher of male role since 1993. And he has been overseeing having those costumes made for us in China. So
Wow.
it's
Authentically
quite
made.
complex. And the stage properties are from China. The musical instruments obviously are from
That's right.
China.
Yeah.
And even the makeup. Is from China. It's the authentic
Because you have these
materials,
special ways to make up your face.
Well, the makeup is for all but even for the painted face, all of the makeup is actually grease paint, which is not even used really in the United States anymore.
Wow.
Only a type of grease paint is used for clowns in the United States, and it isn't the old-fashioned in a tube serious grease paint, the roar, the smell of the grease paint and the roar of the crowd. But this is grease paint, and you get the brilliant colors.
I know they are always brilliant in colors. Yeah. Tell us about the story of the upcoming show, the Lady Mu and the Young Family
This is
Generals.
actually the 3rd play that we've done. That's a story of the Young Family Generals. We did Silang visits his mother. We did it as Silang Tanmo, the name in Chinese, love and loyalty.
Okay.
Because I was told at the time nobody's going to come see a play about some guy going to visit his mother. So,
you have to give it some spice.
yeah. And that was right when many of Jane Austen's books were being made into films, and they have titles like that: Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, love and loyalty. So that's why it had that title. But that was one of the Yang family stories. And then the one you mentioned, Women Generals of the Yang family, in 2006. So Silang visits his mother was in 1998, and then in 2006, and now in 2014.
And these stories all came from the Song Dynasty in China.
The
some
history,
legends.
The history, the Yang family did exist in history, and they did support the Song Dynasty as it was crumbling, and they probably helped hold it together for an extra 100 years, fighting against invasions on all of the northern and western borders.
That's right,
of the Song Dynasty, as the Song Dynasty, got pushed farther and farther to the south. And then in the Yuan Dynasty, there was this romantic novel written about the Yang family. And then there are many other sources of stories and legends about the Yang family. So Lady Mu is not actually an historical character, but most of the other characters are historical. And the marvelous part of the legendary story is how, after all of the men are killed off fighting for the Song, their widows go on fighting in their stead, trying to hold it together.
And the Yang family generals, the women general heroes, heroines, they are also very famous in China.
Extremely famous.
Extremely,
But Lady Mu herself is legendary. She's legendary, and she's not even Han Chinese. We have this wonderful essay. When you buy your ticket, you get this lovely little brochure, and in it there's this marvelous essay by Daniel Kwok, who is an emeritus professor of history at the University of Hawaii, and he explains all of this about the actual history, the novel history, and the theatrical history of the Yang family. And I actually learned things in here I didn't know, because the theatrical history is what you learn when you're in the theater.
That's right.
And that's where it's in this, and talking to him about this, that I learned that she is probably actually Tibetan.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I just think that's a very, very exciting, because here is this Tibetan woman being asked to lead the Song Dynasty Han Chinese armies against other invading non-Han groups.
That's right.
The Xixia in this case, against the Xixia.
Amazing. So tell us about, so starting from February 20th, how many shows and how can people get tickets?
Okay. The show runs for 2 weeks, Thursday through Sunday. So the last performance is March 2nd. And all of the performances are at 8 p.m. except the 2 Sundays, which are at 2 in the afternoon. And the tickets are available at the Kennedy Theater box office.
And people can check on the website and also buy tickets on the web.
Yeah. Now I'm sure someplace in this press kit we've been given a phone number for buying tickets. Did they send you something about that?
Can you?
Here we are.
There's a
turning pages. Box office 956-7655.
956-7655. You can call that number to buy your tickets, or come to the Kennedy Theater to buy tickets. I'll check on the website.
Yeah.
So Elizabeth, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is
a
fun show, and again, our audience members, go see the show. It's an amazing production, and this is Asia in Review at Think Tech Hawaii. And what can I say? Go to watch the show, starting from February 20th. I'll see you next week at Asia in Review. Thank you. Goodbye.